I'm Jacob Greene. I'm an associate professor and director in the Writing, Rhetorics, and Literacies program at Arizona State University. I think since, as you mentioned, ChatGPT first came out, and I think I was part of the first initial batch of teachers who were interested in the technology and maybe a little more excited than some others who maybe kind of saw it as, oh no, this is a tool students can use to cheat, which is still a possibility. But as someone who studies the relationship of writing, technology, and media, I was just really fascinated by what I saw as really just a revolutionary paradigm shift in the way people are going to be writing and communicating pretty much going forward. And so I kind of dove right in when it first came out. I believe I was teaching an upper level rhetoric course, which was kind of broadly about how we persuade, how we think about language and communication and changing beliefs, inspiring action. And so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to incorporate some of the technology. And during that period, it was kind of just throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And I allowed students to write a paper using AI, but then also document their process and their experiences and feelings using the tool. Because one thing that I wanted students to think about in using an AI tool or something like that is the goal is not just to help them do some sort of writing task quicker or more efficiently, which kind of goes against the way that writing is supposed to function as a tool for learning in somewhere like a classroom setting. And so I think, and the students were really great in this class in thinking through, here are ways this tool, really kind of helped me identify certain topics, that I could write about, maybe helped me find some language that I could use for sources. But at the same time, a lot of them really ran into a lot of problems because, these were, students in an upper level English course, have been writing their whole lives, were fairly strong writers, I would say overall. And they definitely struggled, I think, to find a way to have their own voices as writers and thinkers paired with the tool, which is very quick and very authoritative. And so I would say one of the best things you can do as a teacher is affirming and allowing students to affirm what are their experiences using this tool as writers, and helping them to see that there is value to what they are saying and how they're saying it just on its own, even if it isn't produced as quickly, isn't as grammatically correct, and constantly being reflective about that in their experiences. Instead of thinking as a tool as a way to produce text that they would then use in a paper, I said, all right, teach the tool the genre you're trying to write in. Tell it what are the genre characteristics that you're trying to compose. And I think for that assignment, it was like a blog post or something like that, and in that way, the AI was kind of switched, and instead of, you would tell the AI tool, don't write anything for me, I'm going to write, and you tell me what you think about it and give me advice in that way. And so that did a few different things. I'm not trying to train it to replace me as a teacher, which is one possibility, but it was more so getting the students in the process of training the AI tool. They were thinking kind of metacognitively about, oh, these are the genre characteristics I'm writing in. Here's what I would say. So it's partially the AI tool is giving them feedback, but more so they're kind of in the process of training it, thinking about those elements of writing we want them to think about. They're not letting the AI kind of, eclipse their voice as writers. Yes, I definitely have, I've experimented with AI a good bit and kind of putting some of my own writing in. I think when it first came out, I had a book manuscript I had just finished, the pre-AI era, and I put it in and say, hey, what are some, or use this to create a writing model and then write something else, in the style of Jacob Greene. And it did it, and I said, wow, that's exactly a lot of my writing tics that I use. I like to use a lot of phrases like, this is not only this, but this, and it definitely picked up on that. So it's a little kind of embarrassing, almost like a psychotherapy session for your writing. And so that was kind of interesting. But I think, in general, in my own research and scholarship and writing, I've experimented in different ways, having it hey, take a stab at, writing this, a syllabus statement or these other things kind of wholesale. And I've found less, maybe just because I've been writing for longer, and I've found less use kind of in just generate this entire thing. It does tend to kind of have certain styles that it wants to stick to, but I have found it pretty useful for helping me kind of see what could I be missing in this particular approach or in this particular topic. And like I mentioned for my students, it'll kind of help me see, oh, here are avenues for further research that I could explore on my own. I've found it, maybe just because I really love the writing process, I don't love using AI just to kind of generate, sentences or paragraphs or things like that for my own writing, but I have found a lot of use in kind of using it as like a quick, like review of my work to see, what else could I be missing? What else could I be researching in this area? Had like reflection papers they wrote, and I kind of generally went through and coded them based on like different aspects of the writing process, like invention or revision or style or voice. And I'd say things like, it's not very quantitative, but I'd say things related to like style, voice, and arrangement of the piece. That's where I noticed the most tension with those stronger writers, is they had a lot of trouble, like how do I merge what I want to say with the way that this machine is so quickly generating text. And a lot of them said like they would use a portion of the AI and then they would write themselves and found themselves writing differently because they wanted it to flow, and then that flow would be dictated by the AI. And so that was like probably like the key, I guess a key like finding there is, there is points of conflict, definitely much more like that nitty-gritty level of where the writing comes into play. At the broader levels of, topic identification, potential sources, I think students more saw it as like, this is a collaborative tool. I don't feel like I'm losing my agency as a writer. Probably because they're familiar with using tools like Google or search engines where, they're familiar that ideas come from other places, but their language, they're like, that comes from me. So that was pretty, I think, a key finding for that one. I think narrative is central to everything that we're thinking about in terms of how AI is changing writing, how it's changing the communication landscape. Because at the end of the day, yes, AI can do a lot of things really great, producing text and helping us research. I would say most people I talk to who are storytellers, consider themselves storytellers, are very unimpressed with the state of AI. Not to say it might not have a role, but humans really are the best at how do we have a story that's impactful, that's real, that's authentic. AI might create a good story that somebody wants to sit and read, but at the end of the day, something that makes a story, really engaging and true is you feel like you're reading it from another person. It's relating their experiences, their thoughts, and their feelings. And I think I guess AI could mimic that, but at the end of the day, what's the point? And so I think it's really imperative for people to understand narrative, that power that it has, but also the way that narrative can take place across lots of different types of media. And as a writer or communicator, how do you make choices about what media you might want to tell a story within, and how can you use multiple media to do that, which is kind of the approach I took in the narrative studies class that I taught.